Afua Richardson is an Eisner Award-winning illustrator, musician, and writer, best known for her work on Black Panther and HBO's Lovecraft Country. Afua recently launched a successful Kickstarter for her upcoming graphic novel, Aquarius, the Book of Mer, set to launch MerMay 2021. Join us as we have an insightful conversation with Afua about her beginnings, her journey, and the work she is currently pursuing now. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Painted in Color podcast. Today, we are interviewing Afua Richardson, who is an American Eisner Award-winning illustrator, musician, and writer, best known for her work on Black Panther and HBO's Lovecraft Country. So today, we're going to talk about her career, how she got her start, and what she's working on now. So hello, Afua, how are you doing?
Hello, I'm so good. Thank you so much for having me. How are you today?
We're doing great. It's really, really exciting to have you here. I've heard so much about you. Went back when I lived in Atlanta. You were a big name in that scene, and I was really excited to talk to you today. By the way, I miss that city so much. I want to go back. So let's get started. I just want to ask you, the simple question of how did you get started in your longstanding career in comics and music, and just like what did you start reading to get your start, and like what got you excited about comics in the first place?
It was interesting. I don't know if it was interesting, but when I was about 9 years old, I started reading comics the same year I started playing the flute.
Oh, wow.
And why that is significant to me specifically because through my life, music and art were always synonymous. There was never a point in my life where it felt like they were separate. My dad would give me these books that had records. And so multimedia was just something that I was accustomed to. So I was 3 years old. I have these like big beige headphones and this book. And so I'm sitting there with my Fisher Price like record player, listening to the Letter People like teach me how to read. And they've got these funky little tunes. So music and art were always paired, or something like Peter and the Wolf, where there was a story told in music. I was like, oh yeah, like the best books have music, obviously. So when I started reading comic books, I started in my mind like coming up with their own voices, soundtracks. So I was filling in the soundtrack in my mind when I read all of these different superhero comics like Excalibur or um, uh, the X-Men or Swamp Thing, even though I had no idea what was going on because Alan Moore was writing it and I was 9. I didn't understand, but I liked plants. So I liked all of the monsters and weirdos and mutants and things like that. And um, I my parents threw away all my comics. It was my mom. She threw all my comics, my whole collection. I had more comics in my closet than I did clothes, and she threw them all away.
Why did she throw
And
them away? Oh
yeah,
no.
it was super sad. And so I didn't buy them again. I was saving up my allowance and going to the corner store and like buying comics, but I stopped doing that afterwards because I was just kind of heartbroken. And then in high school, I started picking up manga, and someone had given me their you know old dusty collection of heavy metal magazine from the 70s, and I
Oh
probably
wow.
shouldn't have been reading that stuff, but the stories were incredible. You've got Druna, this voluptuous woman on a crazy planet of mutants and monsters, and she had hips. I was like, whoa, what is this?
Yeah,
This
they
is
were the
crazy. This is a
curviest.
little yeah, exactly. And it had Mobius and Frazetta and just all of these like amazing, almost Renaissance looking artists
Yeah.
drawing sci-fi, which was something else that I loved. And um, so those are the books that really primed me, and I started drawing what I saw, and then I got back into comics when Image came in and really made a big stink with like Witchblade and Fathom and all of these different shiny, colorful
Yes.
comics, and Hiroaki Sumura's Blade of the Immortal really, it's just a beautifully told black and white comic, and I just the rest was, you know, whatever it was my friends would loan me and I could get my hands on. It just started filling up my sketchbook with, you know, terribly drawn characters, watercolor paintings, and you know, weird blue people. I loved Beast and Nightcrawler, and
Oh my God, me too.
we'll throw in Vision. He's fuchsia. It's fine.
Yeah, everybody who
Uh,
was just like very
right?
colorful,
Just
colorful
super
monster
colorful, and
people. Always great.
yeah. So I didn't think that I would be able to be a professional comic book artist. I didn't go to school. I'm completely self-taught. And I had so many terrible things happen to me in my life at such a young age. I just thought, well, I'm clearly not meant to be happy. And, you know, doing things that you love, well, that's for people who are happy or have gone to school for art. And I just didn't think I was good enough. Um, so I continued, you know, studying music, went to LaGuardia for the performing arts, attended Juilliard, but I always carried around a sketchbook. And I joined
Wow.
this all-female hip hop group called the Anomalies that were like B girls and MCs and
That's so cool.
graffiti writers and battle DJs. And I was their anime artist and their resident beatbox artist. So I would draw each of the gals on flyers as like manga characters, and I would battle against battle DJs at different competitions and started playing my flute in different bands. And a lot of times I was the only artist around a bunch of musicians. So I would draw flyers and learned how to do graphic design and
Mhm.
websites. And then I started carrying my sketchbook to comic conventions and like getting over my shyness and talking to artists directly, like just being a weird lurker, standing around like, you're the person who draws my favorite thing. I'm just going to stand here. And very kind people like David Mack and Brian Stelfreeze and even Neil Adams, as grumpy as he is, were very, very um, positively reinforcing. You know, they would look at my work and they were like, "You're good, kid. You know, keep going." Why would you lie? And in 2007, I walk. No, I think it was 2005. I walk up to Mark Silvestri at San Diego Comic Con, my first vacation ever.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, I love your stuff. I've loved it for a long time. Witchblade, Darkness, all that stuff. So many lines, so cool. Um, and can I buy something? And here's my postcard with my website if you ever need a colorist, which you probably won't because you see all the greatest artists in the world. So I'm just gonna leave that there and walk away. And he was like, "Hey, I recognize this." And I'm like,
Oh, that's cool.
he recognized one of my pieces because I'd been, you know, littering the internet with all of my stuff for years. Because even though I didn't go to school, I still wanted to draw. Like, I felt like art was the only place where I was heard. You know, it was the only place besides music where I felt like my voice was valid. And I wanted to speak the language better. I wanted to know as much as I could. And 6 months later, I got asked to do my first cover to cover comic at Top Cow, and the rest is history.
That is
Or
amazing.
her story, my story, where.
That's fantastic. I love that, you know, that description of the feeling of going to your first comic convention and like being terrified because these all these artists that you've heard of for years and years, and you know, you walk up to them and they're like, "Oh, they're just people. Like they're also people." And
And
oftentimes, not always,
yeah,
but they're
please go
usually
ahead.
really nice.
Right? You know, and coming from the music world where it's like you have to have an A&R you have to have a manager, book an appointment with an A&R in order to get a meeting so you can have a showcase. And
Yeah.
that's when you meet them for the first time. Like that's and then you're not even actually meeting the artist. That's like if you were a really big Radiohead fan and you could just go to a building and they're just sitting there and they
Oh, you have
sign
to
your
be like,
album.
sup.
Like they're right here and you could just talk to them. So I really had to get over my shyness and just say, okay, well, if you want to learn, you're going to have to learn how to ask questions and you have to be concise because they're here to sell. So
Yeah.
you don't want to waste their time and seem like a total weirdo. So write it down if you have to. And, don't just see them as a resource. They're a person, see if this is something that they enjoy doing. Because if you're going to spend your time, you know, becoming an artist, you've got to learn how to ask questions and communicate because that's what art is, right? Communication. Um, and so I had to uh, go against my better instincts to hide under a rock and ask some questions and it paid off. Yeah, I'm glad that I did. And then I also started doing karaoke and like forcing myself to like perform on a microphone with my voice, not just my instrument where I can hide and pretend that no one's there. And like,
Mhm.
or even beatbox where I'm just like, yeah, all right, like, and just nobody's around, it's just me and the beat and the battle DJ. Like I can pretend no one else is here, but not when it comes to talking to people. You've got to like just say okay.
There's a lot of illustrators, a lot of comic book artists that got their start from going to that one convention,
Mhm.
making the pilgrimage. I'll use that word,
Yes,
Yeah.
pilgrimage,
yes,
to San
Kinda.
Diego Comic Con, getting a booth, sharing a table, something, walking the floor and saying, here I am, here's what I do, love me, to everyone they meet, and
yeah,
hoping that somebody says, well, it's not bad, and like you,
yeah.
like just like what happened to you. What was it, you said like a month, 6 months, something like
Six
that?
months.
Six
Yeah,
months
I was
later, bang,
very lucky,
full comic
No,
book.
very
not
very
lucky.
lucky.
You put yourself out there. You put yourself out there and you got the benefits from doing that.
Yeah.
And I'm fortunate, I
Yeah.
should say. Luck is basically being prepared when the opportunity presents itself.
Mm-hmm.
And that opportunity doesn't always come for people, but you have to make it. I was broke, from 13 to 16, maybe I was homeless. And
Mm.
then after that, I just kind of couch hopped from place to place. I didn't get to go to college. Sometimes I didn't have a place to stay and I slept on the subway. So my mindset was whatever it is I know how to do, I better be excellent at this or I may literally starve.
Yeah.
And that kind of drive, you kind of have to get over whatever it is that you're afraid of. And if you approach your craft with that kind of passion where it's like, look, I may not die from just having a regular desk job. I'm actually happy to have it because I'm paying my bills, I'm eating, and I'm also buying supplies and things like that. And I'm buying my time back. But I'm also learning how to be of service.
Yep.
And as an artist, you are providing a service. You're giving people not just an escape, but a new perspective, um, an emotional vacation. You're taking them someplace else, and depending on how well you are at sculpting worlds, you can make them feel other things, feel the things that your characters are feeling, creating these scenarios where they can reflect back on their own lives and see something in a fictional character and it becomes real.
Yep.
And so that being such a powerful element in my life where I was faced with so many trials that these stories and music and these different things that I ingested took me someplace else so that I could have a different frame of mind. Because if I just, accepted the situation as it was and said, well, I have no home and therefore I am a homeless person and this is what I am. And that's all that I can be. I'm just my circumstances. I'm not anything else. My crafts allowed me to say, yeah, I don't have a home right now, but I'm an artist. Like, yeah, I'm pretty hungry right now, but I'm a musician. Like, I can be the author of my own reality. And then looking at history and the stories that my dad would tell me about, not only, people who endured incredible hardship, I mean, just a tsunami of circumstances, but they faced it with dignity and they were still excellent. They were still inventors, builders, nurses, musicians, entertainers. And not only were they good at what they did, they changed the norm, they changed the standard because they brought their experiences and they innovated. So I had to start asking myself, well, what are you going to bring? And I'm like, oh man, no pressure.
Well, let me ask
Still
you.
figuring that out.
Yeah, well, let me ask you then. What do you feel like you want to say with your work? Like, what kinds of things do you want to give to the world with the comics that you create and the stories that you make and the art that you put out there? I really want to hear more about that and what your inspirations are.
Well, one thing when I really started illustrating and kind of figuring out my own voice, I started drawing what I didn't see or what I wanted to see. And so really early on, I drew a lot of really strong women, and people will define that as whatever they're going to define that as. That's someone who's strong-willed, strong-bodied, whatever that means to you. For me, I lived in New York where beauty and strength and fortitude and actual determination were things that I saw around me all the time. Like when I was a kid, I wanted to be both Chitara and Jackie Joyner Kersee. And so seeing female bodybuilders or people who did actual physical things like, high jump, pole vault, track and field, discus throw, their bodies were changing as per their activity. So I thought, okay, well, if Wonder Woman were really lifting this car, she'd be a quadzilla. So I'm just going to draw me Wonder Woman with quads because I could complain or I could get busy. Like I could see it as a conspiracy. I was like, well, they just want to have big boobs and little hips. No, I could see it as an opportunity. Like just like someone said, okay, well, they don't make pants that fit the ankles of someone who's 6'7". I might as well start, being a tailor. I wanted to tailor what it was that I saw, that was beautiful to me. And what I also want to say with my art is, that these these images that I'm painting or the philosophies that I'm calling from, or in the instance of the book that is coming out that I'm making called Aquarius, the Book of Mer, which I'm super excited about. I started answering questions through research. And some of them were simple. Why are koi important in Japanese culture? Are mermaids just specific to European cultures, just like the chupacabra is to Latino cultures? And if it is, that's okay. But I want to know that for myself. And so I started looking and I started digging just a little bit. And there were stories I had never heard of. The Sabawailnu in Mi'kmaq or Mi'kmaq culture in Nova Scotia, the Injuzu in Zimbabwe, La Sirene, La Baleine in Haiti. And I'm like, oh my gosh, they're everywhere. From the Naga in Indonesia. And like, why are these here? And so I just started looking and researching, and where I didn't have answers, I made them. And I'm going to make sure that when I do make them, I'm going to say, okay, well, this is not a part of the traditional cultural legend. This is my addition and my embellishment, but I do want to let people know where they can know more about this, like as it is with the story attack, and make sure that I honor that. And then also reaching out to people who are from the places that I'm making the stories about, and making sure that that I'm showing proper respect to their lineage and their stories. Because honestly, at the end of the day, our past, what comes of us, it's just a story.
Mhm.
That's all
So,
that'll be left of us anyway. So I want to
so
make sure
you're
that whatever story I leave behind, it makes people reconsider, just change their mind, change their circumstance, and show people, okay, you learn or you repeat the lesson. You can let yourself be bogged down by what's happened, or you can consider yourself a survivor and start to let in the new things that are in store for you because you have this unique experience.
And only you can tell that story because that's your story. No one can take that from you.
so I just have a question about the comic that you have coming out
Mhm.
from Image in
Yes.
on MerMay
Miss
this
Mermaid.
year.
Yeah.
This
Mhm.
mermaid, oh,
So
that's so perfect.
the yeah, this I was actually watching your YouTube channel where the promotional video um,
Cool. Thank
about
you.
that. I was just curious when I was watching it, the all of the different cultures that you were talking about that you found, um, uh, I guess, evidence of mermaids
Mhm.
in her lore. Were there is there any kind of like um, tapestries or art or anything like showing what those characters, what those mermaids look like in those different cultures, or are you making that up based off of your own
I try
research?
to make sure I look up as much as possible, as much as is available. In some instances, there are no illustrations. Like in South Africa, there is something called an ads. It's ADZE.
Hmm.
And I'm going to be referencing it in my first story, as well as the Saba Wayunu, which in Mi'kmaq culture is a halfway person. So it lives below and above the water. And it's also, from the waist below, has like fish like um, appendages, but they don't actually describe it. There aren't many stories that describe it. There were a few anthropologists who went into Canada to speak with the Lunu and the, you know, um, Wabanaki and all of the seven different nations which comprise the Mi'kmaq. And it's an oral tradition. So some of the elders were like, okay, well, we want our children to know, and we want people who are non-native to know as well, because we want our culture to live and survive. And so um, with permission, they told their stories to this gentleman, and they were published, Wilson D. Wallace. And so he did pretty well, to capture most of what um, they were saying, at least according to historians. And so they describe them like the halfway person, apparently a man who's a fisherman called someone out to a small remote island in Newfoundland, and they found something that looked like a child, but it was green, and it had long fingernails, and there was something like, it was, it was on the shore, and it had like it was kind of crouched over and had a big head, but then its legs didn't look human. And
Hmm.
so they thought about burying it in the sand, and um, the indigenous man said, no, we should put it back in the water. And then so I'm taking these different excerpts and testimonials and historical accounts, and telling the rest of the story, and then connecting them. And so in the instance of that, I have like a close uh proximity of what it sounds like or what it looks like. But to me, a halfway person kind of sounds like a frog, because the frog lives above and below the water. It's amphibious. And
Yeah.
so I'm making my Sabawa Inu look like a weird frog man.
That's really cool. So you get to fill in the blanks of these mythologies that really don't have all the blanks filled in, and that's really cool. It's like you're completing the
Exactly.
story. And
So it's been fun. I get to kind of play around and search, and those things that do have more of a description, I'm going to make sure I honor that and stay close to um, their descriptions, like Mami Wata and Mamba Muntu. Um, Mami Wata in West Africa usually gets described as a dark skinned woman with long hair, but Mamba Muntu, who is either described as the turbulence of the ocean or the trickiness of the ocean, she is more biracial. She has like reddish blonde hair, and she's a light skinned Black woman. And there are all these paintings and bars of her. So I'm pulling from those as well, and I want to make sure that, on my website I'll link to, some of the traditional paintings and so on. So it's a fun like research project, and it was just a rabbit hole of so much research and odd stories and weird encounters. And I've always loved like the Twilight Zone and X-Files and just weird things, and mermaid stories have always been kind of flowery, like, oh, I'm in love with the prince and I want to be, it's like a lot of these are like really messed up, weird stories. And I love that stuff. I love like um mysteries and odd, spooky stories. And so I want to create things like that where it's like, could that happen? Maybe. Maybe if you were, not smart and go out in the lake in the middle of the night, you might see some creepy things.
you might not encounter a thing that you want to encounter.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And it's so funny too, because like what we receive in our education and like in the US is so watered down from the versions that have existed, even the ones that are more popular. And
Yeah.
so I always love seeing mythologies that like artists or writers have like actually like brought, I guess, like more to the mainstream, more to like just over here, because there's so much that's been edited out from what we
Yeah.
know. And it really is a shame, because there's so many amazing stories out there. And if only like somebody had grabbed that story and like popularized it or something like that for everybody to know. And I love
Right.
that you're doing exactly that. Because otherwise these stories can really be easily lost and just forgotten by a lot of people, and now a lot of them won't be. So that's really
I
exciting.
absolutely agree. And they're fascinating. And not only that, I'm kind of going into different moments in history and into my own history.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my grandmother passed away this past November, and
Sorry.
then last year in June, her husband, my grandfather, passed away. And unfortunately, that seems to be the time when families come together and start sharing stories. So I actually got to learn more about him when he was gone than when he was alive. There were things I didn't know.
Yeah.
And some of these stories are amazing. Like, he was a photographer, one of the only forensic photographers in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. And he
Oh,
took this photo of Martin Luther King when he was 27 years old, the only photo of him in Alabama, when he visited this small Baptist church, like not too far away from his home. He was like um, his home was a safe haven for civil rights activists passing through Tuscaloosa, because the train tracks were right there. And being a forensic photographer, he's seen it all, and he's seen some crazy things. He was a deacon. He was a member of the Army Corps of Civil Engineers. He just so many different stories and jobs and experiences. He was a park ranger. And so, he lived to be 91.
Oh,
And
wow.
so, um, in the 50s, 40s, when he was a young man, there were people who tried to harm him and plotted to kill him because they didn't particularly like a 6'7" black man telling them to get off the beach when it closed. And so I'm taking some of these stories where people are attacking him and then adding the protective nature of some of these different creatures and saying, like, okay, well, you did this good deed, or your father did this good deed. And so um just as our lineage is protected because of what you've done, we viewed ahead at all of the rivers and turns and the rocks and pitfalls that you'll experience, and we'll be there to make sure that it's smooth sailing. So um with permission of my grandmother and my relatives, I'm going to pay homage to them too, because their stories are worth telling. They're amazing people. They were amazing, and I'm really proud to be their granddaughter. So just as I'm taking different heroes and people from history, um, I'm also taking some of my own experiences and putting it in the book as well.
That's
Is
wonderful.
the is this a mini series or is it going to be an ongoing thing?
It'll be ongoing. I'm going to do a quarterly book because I want to, make it a bigger book, but also I'm doing an audio book and I'm making music for each issue.
Oh, that's so good.
So it'll take me a little more time,
Yeah.
but I want to give more. So I'll take more time to do that.
So is this something that you pitched to Image, or was there just like an open door thing where they said, if you've got an idea, just let us know and we'll, we'd love to work with you. How did that come about?
Well, I've had this idea for a while, and it seemed like anytime I was getting ready to do it, I got hit with a really like fantastic project. I was just like, okay, Book of Mer, go. It's like, hey, if we want to work on Black Panther, and I'm like,
Like, of course I do. How am I going to say no to that?
right? It's like, all right, nothing's gonna stop me. Aquarius, the Book of Mer, go. It's like, hey, if we want to work on Lovecraft Country, and I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
what? Yeah. But now I have prioritized and I'm like, okay, look, nothing is going to stop me from doing this. I'm going to do this. And I wanted to wait until I had the Kickstarter done and the book completely finished before going to Image, because I ran into Mark Silvestri again, but he was with Todd McFarlane. And I was like, oh,
Oh, wow.
and it was at the, the last New York Comic Con. And he was like, I was like, hey, I have an idea for a book. And he was like, well, let us know. And I'm like, nice. Okay. So of course I overthought it, and I was like, it has to be perfect. It's got to be finished. I got to make sure. Like, wait, do I even know how to write? Like, I was second guessing everything. And then after working on Lovecraft Country for a year and then getting the shout out on the show as this unspoken character, I thought, you know what? If HBO and executive producer Misha Green trust me with their stories and their projects and they believe in me, then I need to believe in me.
Yeah.
So I messaged Eric Stevenson and I said, hey, I'm sorry I don't have a lot of work on it done because I'm just coming off the heels of Lovecraft Country and I'm about to do some stuff with Universal right now. But I have this idea. And maybe half an hour later, I get a message back. sounds great. Let's do it. I'm like,
Oh my gosh.
oh my God. Oh my God. What?
That's awesome.
Oh my God. Oh God. I have no choice now. I've got to do this. There's no doubting. There's no second guessing now. It's like I'd been writing the script. The script was finished. I sending it off to my copy editor. And I was like, okay. All right.
Happening.
It's time.
That's
And
fantastic.
then 72 hours later, funded my Kickstarter got fully funded. And I was like, oh gosh, other people believe in this too. Okay.
I love how it
Right.
took working for HBO to realize that you're like, maybe I can actually write my own story. Like, how much encouragement do we need before we can stop imposter syndroming and be like, maybe I can make a thing?
Right. Gosh, it's a story that you tell yourself, and unfortunately it can be a lie
Mm-hmm.
that you're not enough, and that just because you don't know all of the things that you don't know anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
That's such a
And so I'm
lie.
like, look, people put out books and they're not ready, but they were ready. And
Mhm.
they decided they were going to do this. You have been telling other people's stories for 15 years, Afua. So it's time for you to tell your own. And I'm so excited.
Yeah.
I'm super excited.
I'm really excited for you, and I'm excited to read it as well. I can't wait, honestly. I also did want to ask you too, since you brought it up. What was the experience like working on Lovecraft Country? Uh-oh, is that a cat?
Cats.
You always know whatever that mysterious noise is behind you, it's a cat.
Right? No cat, no.
Whatever it is you're doing, don't do it. Please don't knock it over.
Right.
So yeah, I wanted to know more about the experience of working on Lovecraft Country, and like we were talking about the stories that we often don't get to hear and the roles that we don't get to see ourselves in. And the thing I loved about Lovecraft Country is that it's funny because I was watching it with a friend and they didn't get it. He was like, I don't know, like, why are we jumping around so many genres? Like, it's like Indiana Jones, but then it's eldritch horror. And I'm like, do you realize that we haven't been able to see ourselves in these roles basically our whole life? This is an opportunity for us to be anything that we want to be. And so
Yeah.
I really want to know what it was like working on a show like that.
Oh my gosh, it was mind-blowing. I was fortunate enough to live 15 minutes away from where it was being filmed. So I worked on set.
Wow.
Not only in the props department with JP Jones, who I worked with directly, and then from JP Jones to Misha Green, I worked on set. So sometimes like a lot of the rooms that you saw, from the underground caves to the apartment in Chicago, those were all built sets. Even the bar was built
That is
from the ground up, constructed. And the observatory, that observatory with the where the crazy wormhole and everything was, all of that was built, and JP built a lot of it. So it was incredible to see it, just how many hands went into construction, and like just, I was like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. I'd never been on a major movie set before. I'd done a lot of videos and a lot of like smaller films and like Broadway productions and things like that. But this was intense. I mean, 6-story high studio buildings where they are building just crazy tunnels that get lower and lower over time, so that the water seems to be rising as they get closer and closer to the door. And there's an entire rig, or when they're crossing that whole
that chasm
abyss, that cavern, it's 20 feet off the ground. They're literally 20 feet off the ground.
Wow.
Like crossing a beam that's only maybe this wide, and then everything else is like CG'd in, but still they sort of built the doorway and everything else. So just to see that level of artistry and construction, and just these practical props, and even the orrery, like the little golden thing that spun around that Hippolyta was using, that was real. Like, that wasn't CG. That was a real mechanical device that was built and constructed and designed. And I was just totally blown away. I was just like, I'm just drawing paper comics. You guys are building observatories. story. I ain't nothing. What is this?
No.
It was just, I was totally blown away. It was, and then like to see like Topsy and Bopsy in person,
Yeah.
I was like, nope, nope. That's a no. That is, well, I was like, where do they find these bow-legged children's from? And I thought they were kids. Like they're totally not kids. They are grown adults that are choreographers and ballet dancers, and they're professional like consummate dancers. But I was just like, scary children's. Nope. But I had I had the opportunity to teach Jada Harris. So on the show, for those who haven't seen it or those who don't know, I created the hand-drawn comics for Diana Freeman, who is Hippolyta and George Freeman's daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And so George goes out into the South, Jim Crow segregated South during the 1950s, and finds different locations from hotels to cafes or different towns that are friendly and serving to minorities and those who are not. And it's very dangerous work. And so bearing that in mind, Diana creates a comic book about her dad called Panther Man, where he goes out into the dark world and then brings back information to protect his people. And then her mother, Hippolyta, who is fascinated with the stars and actually named a star and wants to go out, even though it's dangerous, and do this work also. She's drawn her as Orinthia Blue. And so I've drawn all of the hand-drawn, notebook paper comics, as well as all the charcoal drawings when she can't speak, when she's cursed by Lancaster, the police officer, and like Topsy and Bopsy are chasing after her. So in addition to drawing the comics, I worked with Jada Harris, who plays Dee, and we got some art lessons in so that when she has the illustrations in hand, she can sort of draw on top of it and it feels natural to her. And she's such an awesome artist. She had to learn so much for this show. She had to learn how to ride a bike and like how to draw. And she's also, an incredible actor and remembering all her lines. And she just gave such a powerful performance. I was just like, so much happens to this little girl. Like, oh gosh. And it was fun for me because I only knew the story through the comic. So even though I was sitting on set sometimes when they were filming certain things, I didn't know what was going on. I only knew what was happening in relation to the comic book.
Yeah.
So when I got to see it and watch it just all come together, all these different genres and influences, which the Indiana Jones reference, that was absolutely a call to all of these different things that Misha loved. She wanted to do it all. She wanted to just say, listen, these are the things that I love. These are the things that I've seen. These are the things that I want to see for people who look like me. And I want them to see themselves also. That it felt like what I felt like as a kid when I was like, well, I don't see the kind of beauty and strength in my reality, in my fiction. So I'm going to make it. And that's exactly what she did, but on a crazy scale.
Yeah.
With a Game of Thrones budget.
Yeah, definitely. And then in that show with a Game of Thrones budget, you were mentioned by name as
my God.
in the show. What did that feel like?
I ugly cried. Yep.
Yeah.
I totally ugly cried. It was so bad. I was like, because at first, like when JP explained to me and Misha explained to me what was going to happen, I didn't understand. They were like, you're going to be a character on the show. And I'm like, am I going to have to act? What? Like, no. We're going to write you in the comic. And I'm like, what?
Like, what does that mean?
What are you talking about? It's like, so when she asks, like he was trying to tell me without like giving it away. And I'm like, that's not happening. Like I'd almost like, I'm not the droid you're looking for. Like in my mind, I was just like, that's not actually real. And they're just gonna cut it out and like change their minds. I don't. And then, about a year later, they send me a video clip because the comic that Hippolyta hands to Diana was supposed to be a full comic, but the dates got mixed up and I only had 4 hours to make the cover. And I was just like, I can't draw a 10-page comic in 4 hours. um, so what was going to be in the book was all of her travels explained, where she goes to this other planet and she collects these other things and she travels with George. And um, in one, I got to write some of it since it didn't actually exist.
Oh, wow.
And so what I wrote was, she teleports into another place and she's in an elevator and the elevator opens and there's my studio and I hand her a Wacom pen, like, are you ready to be the author of your own fate? And I show her how to draw so she can show Diana. And I had, laid it all out and got everything ready, and we're just like, we need it tomorrow. And I'm just like, I can't. Right. Yeah. And so we got the first 3 pages in. But the rest, all the sketches and things like that, when I do my Kickstarter, I'm going to do a new art book with basically just everything that I've done for the past, 5 or 6 years or so. And those pages are going to be in the art book. Like, okay, well, this is, what we didn't get a chance to see. But man, it was such an honor to be a part of that. Like, that was just incredible and kind of healing for my family. My dad was he's a physicist and a teacher, and he taught at like West Point, and really, really brilliant man. But he was also a sculptor and an oil painter, and he would make things and just paint and make all of these different creations. But you get a few kids and then you join the military and those things kind of get put to the side. And when he was in college, people got scholarships who were the right color, and they just figured like, yeah, well, you're not like really interested in fine art, so we're just not going to let you have this opportunity. And so he wanted me to do art because he understood that it gives you an emotional maturity. It helps you funnel your ideas in sort of like a mind manifest kind of way. Like, you can deal with things where you take your emotions, instead of being destructive, you can make something constructive and look back at it and say, okay, you were feeling really bad, but you wrote a song. Or you were feeling really bad and now you've done this painting and now it contains your emotions instead of, somebody's face at a bar. And so, but he didn't want me to do art seriously because he just felt like there was no place for us. And then to be able to do this and then do this professionally and then say, Dad, if it weren't for your sacrifice and your hard work and your vision and you giving me the tools to just be myself and funnel my mind into something, I would not be able to do this. So sharing this with him, like, Dad, we're on TV, it was very much like I'm not gonna cry because but it really meant a lot to me and my family. So yeah,
you make me cry. It's beautiful. Yeah, it's wonderful how it can come full circle like that, because like when we're younger and we're looking around at the industry and who's in it, we often tend to only see one or a few types of people who are actually doing it. And it's really difficult to see ourselves in those positions when we're not there already. But the fact that, people like you are here doing what you're doing, and this is why we run the show in the first place, is because we want to let people know that we are out there, we are creating, and we are sharing our stories and making these things come to life, and letting other people know who look like us, that they belong here too. And I'm hoping that with each generation that goes forward, they'll be able to see more and more of themselves in the industry, so they can not doubt themselves and not be scared that this
Yeah.
can't go anywhere. And so thank you for doing that, and thank you for sharing that. That was
Yeah, thank you. And sometimes it's just the psychological permission. And I know I say that quite a bit, but it's just saying, okay, you're here. Like going to my first convention, I saw Gail Simone, Sanford Green, Karan Grant,
yeah,
Celia Kyle, Amanda Connor, Amanda Palmer.
that's awesome.
And I was like, and oh my gosh, I was working with her on Black Panther World of Wakanda. Um, my my brain, it's late. But,
We'll just do it done real quick. It's like this is actually. Oh man.
Aletha Martinez.
There we go.
And I was like, this is your job. You are inking Iron Man. You are doing backgrounds for Joe Quesada. This is not like the thing that you do on your lunch break when you're getting crumbs all over your keyboard while you're answering the phone. No,
Yeah.
this is your job. This is your job. And okay, why not me?
Yeah,
why not me? Like, do I necessarily need someone to look exactly like me to be in a place for me to say, like, okay, there is something valid that you have to bring to this industry? Not necessarily, but it helps.
it does
It
help.
definitely helps. Sometimes you just need a mirror to see yourself clearly. And these folks provided a mirror. Larry Stroman. I was just like, oh, Mark Toshiera. And I was like, oh, they were here. They've been here. I just didn't know what they looked like because I was too busy looking at their line work, and there wasn't much internet then. So,
well, even in Wizard magazine, remember Wizard?
Yeah,
They
definitely.
there was so few artists that they gave a limelight to if they were outside of Image or the top selling Marvel comic or something like that.
It's true.
I didn't know Larry Stroman was a black dude until Tribe came out. I'm like, he's drawn these black folks in these X Factor. I'm like, this is kind of weird. It looks like he knows what he's doing. But then you go to the convention, you go, oh my God, that's why. And you're getting all excited and they're like, oh man.
Exactly. He's been there and he's still there.
Doing it. Yeah.
He's amazing. And if I'm lucky,
have you ever
get him to draw.
Have you ever done the San Diego, not San Diego, the Schaumburg show in Harlem?
Oh yeah,
the comic book festival?
Yeah, I haven't been there yet.
Okay.
But I would like to, especially I wanted to wait until I had my own book.
Okay.
Makes sense.
But I would love to go, and especially since when I'm releasing the Book of Mer in May, I'll be putting out music with it too, so I'll have music to perform at the Schaumburg if they'll have me.
I think it would be beautiful. I think it would be really beautiful. Larry Stroman, he comes through there every once in a while.
Yeah.
And like I see him every year when I do that convention, but they would love to have you. I know
it would be amazing. It'd be a homecoming.
It would
be. It would be an honor.
Gosh, because I lived on 145th and St. Nick, 135th on Strivers Row, 116th and Adam Clayton Powell. It's all over her.
You'd be all over your old stomping grounds.
Exactly.
That's beautiful. You have, it's wonderful. You have so many different things going on, like between doing music, between doing, your comics, between doing Aquarius, Book of Mer, between working on freelance. I wanted to know, how do you organize all of it? How do you keep yourself all above board with all these things that you have going on and doing them still so beautifully?
Clones. No. Sorry.
I wish. You're going to tell me how to do that because I don't know how to do it yet.
Okay, that's the answer.
Next question.
No. There's so many things. It feels like a curse sometimes because there are things that I want to do, and inspiration just kind of floats in whenever it does. It's not really something that you should depend on to be perfectly honest. People will say like, what inspires you? And I'm like, life, music, food, walking,
Mhm.
but when it does strike and it's an idea that I think I should either refine or come back to later, I will allow myself to jot it down. So if I have a song idea, I'll like open up Logic or GarageBand, record it, and then come back to it and say, okay, was that a good idea or is not so good idea? But I keep a list, and every day I write down, what I need, what I need to do, what I want to do, and what I dream about. And I have to refine that list,
Mm.
every day. And so I have my task list so I can kind of I keep it right here.
There it is.
And so I can say, okay, this is what I really need to do today. And if I don't get it done, I'm not going to beat myself up. I'm just going to rewrite the list the next day. But also, I'm going to keep in mind that there are things that I want to do. And I need to make time for it, because I can just talk about it all day, but it's not going to become real if I don't actually make the time to make it a part of my regimen. So you are what you repeat. And so I'm like, okay, well, I've got to, if I want to get in better shape, if I want to get back to playing the flute, if I want to, learn to play the piano, just even if it's 10 minutes, just take the time and say, okay, I'm just going to let myself learn this slowly, because, and this is something I repeat a lot, but practice does not make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect.
Yeah.
So if you slow down enough to get it right, if you kind of say, okay, well, I'm not good at this, and I need to slow down in order to understand where I am doing this incorrectly, then I can figure out how to improve and then repeat that over time. So if you're an artist and your weakness is hands, start drawing your own hands, start tracing hands, whatever it is you need to do to get the shape and volume in your mind and solidify it, and then start practicing it on your own, and then from your imagination, etc., etc. Or if you want to get in better shape, it's like, okay, well, I'm not that strong, I'm not that flexible, so I'm just going to do what I can do right now, and then do 5 of them. Can't do a full push-up, so I'm just going to like hold myself up, like whatever it is that you can do where you're at. It's going to grow, it's going to get better, it can only get better from there.
Yeah.
And if you don't repeat it, it's going to get worse. So you kind of have to ask yourself, like, where you are at this moment, at this point in time in your life, would you be okay with it being exactly the way it is right now? And if the
Mm.
answer is no, then you have to start making that list, because once you see where you're going, it's kind of like a GPS. If you're just driving around, it's going to feel like it's going to take forever. But if you might not necessarily know where it is and you've never quite been there before, but at least you have a destination. And if on the way you say, okay, well, this isn't really what I want, you can change that destination. But you would have known through experience and not through, just, oh, well, I never tried, so not knowing. So I give myself the opportunity to try something. And if it doesn't work, it's like, okay, well, I would like to do that, and I'm just going to admire this from afar. Or I'm going to say, all right, well, I'm not the best piano player, but I'm not going to be a better piano player unless I start playing.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, I got these 3 chords, and I'm just going to play the heck out of these 3 chords until it's easy.
Yeah.
And then I'm just going to add another one. And then another one. I let myself be okay with being terrible at something for a time until it feels comfortable. And so there are a lot of things that I want to do, and I have to kind of fight the urge to procrastinate, which is a form of self-sabotage.
Yep.
And you have to let yourself rest too. You can't just like work, because then you're not going to have anything to give to your artwork. So I have to schedule in rest, schedule in time,
Mhm.
walk around so my legs don't atrophy.
It's always the struggle. It's like an artist cannot stay at their drawing table for the entire day. Like that's just not going to work for anybody.
No, you will
Not
get
at all.
depressed, and then your body will start talking to you like,
It's like, hey, we're
This
depressed.
is all your life is.
You removed in 10 hours. I don't like it.
Why am I sad inside? It was like, because you need like vascularity in your knees, like you need blood flow and water,
sunlight at all.
right? Yeah.
Eat a leaf,
Seriously.
please.
Totally. So I try. I'm still figuring it out. Sometimes I end up staying at the desk for like 4 or 5 hours, and I'm like, okay, nope. I have a sit stand desk, so I stand, and the cats like run around my feet and play with cables. So
yeah, my cats are always on my desk when it's up on the standing position. They're just like behind in the window. It's pretty, they're back there somewhere. But I appreciate your approach to learning, because a lot of people are really uncomfortable with being bad at something, like for any length of time, and they oftentimes tend to give up before they even get a chance to improve themselves. But I think what you said is really important, that it's not practice that makes perfect, but it's perfect practice that is what really matters. And thank you for sharing that, because that's really helpful. I think I'm going to adopt your method too, by the way, because I've been bullet journaling, but that seems like a much more intentional way of going about planning out your goals and seeing where you want to go next. So so I want to ask you, what do you want to do next, and what do you like after the Book of Mer? I know that that's a new thing, and it's still being worked on, but do you have any plans for any future projects upcoming next, or anything that just you thought about that you haven't been able to do yet?
Well, I want to turn the Book of Mer into something a lot more multimedia, and maybe build an app, turn it into an animation.
Oh yeah.
And so I'm chatting with some people and saying like, okay, well, what do I need to learn in order to make this real? And so I've been getting a lot of great feedback, and I'm like, oh boy, this is happening faster than I thought it would. And I want to, well, we'll see what our future holds as far as performing, but I want to get back into performing and just, I don't know. I also want to kind of build a school, like an online school and network, because there are things that I want to learn from other artists, because there are things that they do that are like amazing, and I'm like, why didn't I think of that? And so I sometimes I'll approach a program and I'm like, okay, whoa, there's just, I don't know how to undo in this program. So I would like to chat with other artists and say, okay, well, walk me through your approach to this particular process. How do you do this thing in this program? Because I love what you do here. So I'm just going to ask you for this like small technique here, and then maybe build something like Domestica or something like that, but specific to comics, and a video series. And I don't know, I want to do all the things, just
All the things.
Afua, I love that you're such a learner. Like in this whole conversation, just hearing how you went from being a really shy kid to realizing you need to communicate not just with your art, but with people. And you forced yourself to do karaoke to get over the nerves, like, and you keep pushing yourself. Like you see a barrier, you recognize that you have, trouble with it, and then you push yourself and you learn it. And that is so important to hear, especially for students. And it's just like, also hearing just like over the span of your career you're still eager to learn, and that should never go away. It's like this is a long, art is such a long career, and it's just, yeah, anyway, it's just been amazing to hear just how you approach everything. So
thank you. I just, man, I when I was a musician full time, and I was like a music student, and I got to see just some really phenomenal musicians. I mean, just whew. I got a chance to, like, I was working at Sam Ash Music on 48th Street in New York. And one afternoon, Stevie Wonder comes in because he buys his keyboards from Chai Michaels in the keyboard section downstairs. And so somebody calls up like, oh my God, Stevie Wonder's downstairs. I know he's your favorite. Because I used to sit and I still have the book. But when Stevie came out with that 4-disc set of like his greatest hits, and I was studying sheet music. I got the sheet music and I started like charting and looking at the different relationships between the notes that he chose piano wise. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like comparing it to classical music or any of these other things, I'm like, where do you even, like the colors that he would create through sound?
Oh.
Completely phenomenal. It's just like, are you just feeling this? Is there just something that's just passing through you and deciding to choose Stevie Wonder to like make this hue? Because when I would hear what it is that he would play, I was like, oh my gosh, like this is fuchsia going into turquoise, and then it resolves in yellow. Like that's how it felt like looking at his stuff. So he was downstairs and I was on the phone like with a customer, and I think it was like Bette Midler. Like it was just a really bizarre day. And I'm just like,
Oh my
I
God.
can't leave Bette Midler on the phone. She's trying to buy like 100 keyboards for her junior high school to donate, and nobody's helping her. I gotta like help her out. I was just like, this is the strangest day. Like, what is happening? And so when I finally make it downstairs, he's gone. And I'm like,
Oh.
so I was really heartbroken. Like I was like on the verge of tears, and I go outside and my friend is sitting in the passenger seat of this car and all the windows are kind of like blacked out. But you know, it's New York, so there's so many cabs and things like that. So I didn't really think of it. And I'm like, oh, what's going on? And I was just like, you don't understand. Like Stevie Wonder was here, and he was like, oh yeah. And I was like, yeah, like how do you explain to someone that their music choices and their chord progressions and just their lyrics and just their lifetime of music from like 9 until now completely changed your vision of like the potential of music forever? And I was like, well, you could just tell them that. I was like, I would, but they're gone. And plus, you know, I just had lunch and my breath smells terrible and I don't have any gum.
Oh.
Since he can't see me, he would just smell my breath. And so he was like, oh man, I don't have any gum. And he turns and he looks behind him and was like, do you have any gum? So Stevie's in the back laughing. He's like, yeah, I got some gum. So we have a conversation, and when he comes back, he at the time, if you wanted a different MIDI sound, like a keyboard that you can plug into an audio program and have any instrument, basically, as long as the sound was available in the program. Back in the day, you could only get it inside a keyboard. So he would go through each sound. They would have like 500 sounds, like a Roland, you know, whatever, like a Phantom or whatever would have like 500 different sounds. He'd sit there and go through all those sounds to decide if it was something that he wanted to invest in. And so he was playing Tuesday Heartbreak. And so everybody was crowded around him, and just seeing just his relationship with this instrument, thousands of hours of repetition where it's his language. He's not thinking anymore. He is just playing. It's kind of like that samurai that can cut the bullet in half. He has done this so many times that the shortcut between his hands and his mind is lightning fast. It's an impulse. He's just feeling through these keys. And I didn't know all the words to Tuesday Heartbreak, but I was like way in the back, like behind like 100 people. And so I'm walking and carrying some boxes and kind of mumbling to myself, like, I want to be with you when the nighttime comes. And he's like, but it was really quiet. It was more like, I want to be with you. You know what I mean? And he's like, Afua, is that you? And I was like, oh. He's like, come on up here, girl, and sing this song. And I'm like, oh my
Oh
God.
my goodness.
So I just sing what I know. And I mean, him, Sheila E. I got a chance to perform with Sheila E. I got to see Outkast perform from backstage and just watch them perform live. Tito Puente, when he was alive, just seeing him like just turn off his mind and whatever wanted to manifest in the moment, it chose Tito Puente to like just I was just like, oh my God, I haven't played enough to be where they are. That means I have to learn. And sometimes I feel like I'm not as consistent as I'd like to be, but I am also very hard on myself. I don't give myself a break.
It's like, yeah, like mine, you're also doing art. So it's just like you're split between two creative pursuits. That's a lot. That's a lot of thinking. That's a lot of intelligence that requires to operate both of those things. And I'm always really impressed when people have more than one, like, you know, creative like language that they can speak, because music is a whole nother category and then art is another category. And learning both of those is really impressive. So to do it both, to do them both and to do it well, that's an accomplishment in and of itself. So you can't be hard on yourself. I won't let you. Because then I'll feel really bad for not knowing how to do music at all. I only do one thing.
I don't think you should be hard on yourself at all, because from what you've told us, your grandfather had an eclectic career, forensic photographer, you said park ranger or ranger?
Park ranger, yeah.
He did a lot of different things in his life. Your father did a lot of different things in his life. It's almost hereditary. It's like, yeah, you're like, you are, if you can't help but to do a bunch of different things and be good at it. That's awesome. And find the time to do it.
Yeah.
If I split myself like that, I don't know. It's incredible. So, you know, I would never don't beat yourself up. Just, you know what you're doing.
Oh yeah.
And you're comfortable. I think I don't even know if I'd say you're stuck in your own head about it. And I don't know.
I'm pretty stuck in my head.
You're stuck in your
I have to like give myself a deadline, because I will overthink it and over criticize it to the point of paralysis, where it's just like, okay, well, it's not worth putting out. It's not good enough. And it's just like, stop, you stop. Like, it's really bad. So that's another reason why I decided to just like, no, like Black Friday, you said you were doing the Book of Mer Kickstarter. I don't care what's going on. You got literally like 4 days before, I was like, I'm not doing this. This is not happening. I can't do this. It's like, you can't not do this. Okay, so shut up and go ahead and get it done. There's a constant war in my mind, but thankfully it leans towards getting things done.
Yeah, all of that is good for something, at least. It's for productivity, but yeah, if only the negatives didn't come with it.
And you remember to look at your
tiny
list.
Voices. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
You remember to look at your lists.
This is true, and I'm a lot more productive when on those days where I'm just like, and you know, someone might say that I have ADD, and you know, there's an executive at Marvel who says like, yeah, you know, I'm diagnosed as having ADD, but because I'm able to pay attention to so many different things at once, I just use it to work on different projects at the same time, and then find a way to anchor myself so I can come back. I'm just like, so one could call it ADD and someone else could call it multitasking. But if you have a way to be proficient, then turn your poison into medicine.
Yeah.
It's only multitasking if it's successful.
Yeah. If it's what?
If it's successful, if you achieve your goals. I mean, if you want to do a bunch of stuff and you achieve nothing, then
oops.
Yeah, it's just a wasted day.
This is true. No, you're absolutely right. So that's why I keep a list, so I actually know what that is. And I have to learn balance too, because I'll end up being like, I don't have any friends. I don't really have a life. I just draw stuff. This is all I do. And it's just like, yeah, this is your choice. This is what you wanted. And I'm like, that's true. Okay. There's a lot of internal dialogue.
Oh yeah. And it's great though, because like you have figured out how to harness what your mind is and turn it into something that's gold. And I think that's the trick for, anybody who's struggling with focus or ADD, like, I am as well. And just like, I can't accomplish this. I hate my work. I'm a perfectionist, etc. But there's all those things could be, it's a double-edged sword. It could be a good thing or it could be a bad thing. And it's up to you to change what that is for you and what that means for you. And so what I see is that you've changed it into something that works out in the positive for you, even if your mind has a constant monologue of just like, meh, 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 meh.
Totally.
Today.
Yeah, like someone asked me like, okay, so when do you get to the point where you stop hating your work? And I was like, what's that? I haven't gotten there yet. Let me know. Like, because it doesn't go away. You just say, okay, well, I don't like this, but I don't have time to let my mind take me on a ride.
Mm-hmm.
I don't I don't have time. I've got to get this done and I'll get better the more I do this, because that's all that can really happen. It's kind of like judging a cake before it's baked. It's like, this batter's not really that good. It's like, well, how do you know? How do you know how well this is going to be unless you finish it? So I'm trying to, I think at some point I was just like, I just need to judge the finished product and then observe my mistakes from there and then do it again.
Yeah.
So short goals, deadlines, things that you're just like, okay, well, I have no choice. I have to do this. If I have to drink coffee and stay up to get this done, well, guess what's happening today?
He's like, well, just dive right in and get it done.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's something to look forward to with each piece, because at least for me anyway, it's like I this is not my best, but the next one will be. And it's just, I feel like it'd be boring if I just reached it after a while. It'd be nice after, after a few drawings, but then be like, this is boring, So I prefer that.
Absolutely. It's kind of like a video game where it's just like, okay, I'm gonna beat this boss and I got through this level really easy. And there's no like sense of pride where it's like, I've done this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And of course, you don't want everything to be grueling and everything to be like, this is like pulling teeth. But finding those ways to make it fun and then reward yourself for actually like getting to where it is you want to be. Like, okay, I did a good thing. All right, even though it's not the best.
Yeah, it's like, it's always more satisfying if you hike a difficult mountain and then get to enjoy the sunrise or whatever at the very top after a hard climb.
Exactly.
And then even after you're done, you're like, I can climb a bigger mountain next time and see where we go.
Totally.
Always learning and always improving. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Before we go today, is there anything that you wanted to, obviously, the Book of Mer is coming out during MerMay. So do you want to take us out on that? Just like tell us where we'll be able to get it once it's ready. And when exactly is it coming out?
Well, Aquarius, the Book of Mer will be out MerMay 2021. So you can ask your local comic shop to order a copy. There were some issues with the add-ons, and so a lot of people were not able to get David Mack's Kickstarter exclusive variant. So I'm going to make a version of his cover as a variant for the book that people will be able to get. It's not going to be the same one as what's available. It's not going to be the whole thing. So I'm going to adjust it and make a variation, but that will be available. And also you can visit AfuaRichardson.com. That's A-F as in Frank, U-A, Richardson.com, or follow me on Instagram at Doctafu, D-O-C-T-A-F-O-O. I'm also on Twitter and Facebook under my name, Afua Richardson, and I will be littering the internets with all of the mermaidy things and sea creatures and sirens and naga and all of those things. And just reach out and say hello.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for coming on the show and talking to us. This was fantastic. So of course, I really enjoyed it, and I hope y'all enjoyed it as well. Well, we'll see you next time. Take care.